Welcome to tranquil sleep, where soothing stories and gentle narration help you find deep rest. Before we begin tonight's tale, take a moment to settle yourself. Find a position that feels completely comfortable. Perhaps you're lying beneath a soft blanket, your head sinking into your pillow, the weight of the day slowly falling away. If you wish, close your eyes now. Take a deep, slow breath in through your nose and exhale gently through your mouth. Let the rhythm of your breath become smooth and natural, unhurried, peaceful, quiet. Imagine the sound of gentle waves rolling in from a calm sea, each one washing softly against the shore, again and again, steady and soothing. A cool evening breeze drifts through the air, carrying with it the faint scent of salt and the hush of distant tides dot above. The sky is painted in twilight, that magical in-between moment when the light has not yet fully faded. Lanterns flicker along the water's edge, glowing softly, their reflections trembling like golden stars upon the waves. And somewhere nearby, perhaps just outside your window, rain begins to fall, soft and steady, adding its own quiet rhythm to the night. You are safe here. You are at peace. This is your time to let go, to rest, to dream. And so, as the world outside grows quieter, let's begin tonight's story. A story of a coastal town where the air always smells of sea and rain, and where one small light, a lantern by the sea, holds the memory of every calm night that ever was. The town by the Sharat, the edge of the world, where the ocean stretches endlessly and the horizon melts into mist, lies a small seaside town named Murallan Bay. It's a place that seems to breathe in time with the sea rising and falling, never hurried, never still. Cobblestone streets wind gently down toward the harbor, lined with old stone cottages whose windows glow like fireflies at dusk. When the tide is high, you can hear the faint clinking of boats drifting softly against the docks. And when the tide is low, the scent of salt, driftwood, and seagrass fills the air. It is always twilight here, or at least it feels that way. The light never too harsh, never too dark. The people of Murallan Bay move with a quiet grace, speaking softly, walking slowly, as if mindful not to disturb the peaceful rhythm that cradles their town. On nights when fog rolls in, you can see small lamps glowing along the shoreline, tiny dots of golden light scattered across the silver mist. And in the very heart of that fog, on a small rise overlooking the sea, stands the old keeper's house, where our story begins. The old keeper's house, the house had stood there for nearly 100 years, its white stone walls softened by time, its windows framed with ivy and wild rose. It wasn't large, but it was cozy, built for comfort rather than grandeur. Inside, everything smelled faintly of sea salt, candles, and tea leaves. Every evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, a woman named Alara lit a lantern in the window overlooking the sea. It was said that the lantern's glow could be seen from miles away, and that sailors used it to find their way safely back to the harbor. Alara had been the keeper of that light for as long as anyone could remember. Her hair was silver like moonlight, her eyes calm as the ocean after rain. Though she lived alone in the little house, she never seemed lonely. The sea was her companion, the wind her friend, and the lantern her constant guardian. Each night, she would sit beside the window with a book in her lap, listening to the waves, sipping warm chamomile tea. Outside, the storm would pass or the fog would roll through, but inside, the house remained a pocket of stillness, safe, warm, and bright dot. The lanterns glowed, the lantern itself was something special. It wasn't an ordinary light, not just a flame burning in glass. Its glow had a warmth that seemed alive, almost as if it remembered every person who had ever looked upon it. When the night was particularly dark, the lantern shone brighter, its light pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "Children," said it, whispered softly when the waves grew restless. Little songs of calm that could soothe even the wildest of storms. And perhaps it was true, because on more than one occasion, when winds howled and rain lashed against the cliffs, Elara would simply rise from her chair, place a gentle hand upon the lantern, and whisper, "Steady now, my friend. The night will pass soon." And somehow, it always did. Visitors at dusk one evening, just as twilight began to deepen, Elara heard a knock at her door. It was rare for anyone to visit at this hour, especially in such gentle rain. When she opened the door, she found a young traveler standing there, wrapped in a cloak darkened by mist. "Forgive me," the traveler said softly. "I was following the light from your window. The fog grew thick along the shore, and I lost my way." Elara smiled, her eyes kind. "You did well to find it. Come in, you must be cold." The traveler stepped inside, shaking off droplets of rain. The warmth of the room embraced them at once. The scent of tea, the gentle hum of a kettle on the stove, the soft light of the lantern filling every corner with gold. "Sit by the fire," Elara said, motioning toward a low chair. "You can dry your cloak while I pour some tea." As the traveler settled in, they gazed around the room. Every shelf was lined with small glass bottles filled with sand, shells and bits of sea glass, each labeled in neat handwriting. There was one from every corner of the coast: North Tide Bay, Whispering Shoals, the Silver Strait. Elara noticed their curiosity and smiled. "Those are pieces of the sea's memory," she said. "I collect a handful from each place I've visited, so I never forget the sound of its waves." The traveler's eyes softened. "They must all sound different." "They do," she said. "Some seas sigh, others sing, but all of them rest at night." The story of the lantern. When the tea was ready, Elara poured it into 2 small cups and joined her guest by the fire. For a while, they sat in companionable silence, listening to the faint patter of rain against the window and the rhythmic call of waves below. Then the traveler asked, "May I ask about the lantern? It seems to shine brighter than any I've ever seen." Elara looked toward the window, where the golden light shimmered softly against the fog. "That lantern was given to me a long time ago," she said, "by someone who once told me that every light we kindle is a promise to be a guide for someone, somewhere." She sipped her tea, her voice calm and low. "So I've kept it burning all these years, through calm and storm alike. Some nights, no one sees it. Other nights, travelers like you find their way to it. Either way, the light remains." The traveler smiled faintly, the firelight reflected in their eyes. "It's beautiful," they murmured. "It feels alive." Elara nodded gently. "Perhaps it is. Some things glow not because they burn, but because they remember." The sea's lullaby outside, the rain grew softer, falling in silken threads. The sea beyond the cliff's side, a slow and endless sound that wrapped around a little house like a lullaby. Elara and the traveler spoke less and less, their voices fading into comfortable quiet. The lantern in the window flickered once, twice, then steadied, its light turning warmer, richer, as though joining the rhythm of the rain and the tide. Somewhere out at sea, a small boat drifted between waves. its sailors catching the faint golden gleam of that very light and steering homeward. Alara noticed, and a peaceful smile touched her lips. She whispered, "There they are, another soul returning." The traveler watched her in silence, the sound of her words washing gently through the quiet room. Into the night, the fire crackled softly, and Alara rose to add one more log to the hearth. She moved slowly, her steps unhurried, as if every motion was part of a well-loved rhythm, one learned over many calm evenings just like this. "Stay the night," she said to the traveler. "The fog will linger till morning, and the sea always rests best when you do." The traveler nodded, grateful. And as the hours drifted on, the house remained still, just the quiet hiss of rain, the gentle sway of the lantern's flame, and the deep, slow breath of the ocean beyond. Somewhere between the rhythm of those sounds, the traveler's eyes grew heavy. They leaned back, wrapped in a soft blanket Alara had laid over their shoulders, and as sleep began to pull them under, they heard one last whisper, not from Alara, nor from the sea, but from the lantern itself. "Rest now, traveler. The night is kind." Soft music returns, a gentle closing breath. And as we leave Alara's house tonight, the rain still falling softly, the waves still murmuring below, feel the peace of this moment. Imagine that golden light shining through your own window, steady, patient, endless. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the sea. In and out, calm and still. You are safe. You are warm. You are at peace. Sleep deeply now. Dream softly until the morning comes. Morning arrived slowly, wrapped in a hush of pale mist. The world outside was softened, blurred around the edges, as though the night had not yet fully left, and the sun had decided to rise with gentle patience. The rain had passed, leaving behind a cool stillness, the kind that lingers after a long sigh. The traveler stirred beneath a blanket, woven thick with wool and warmth. A faint orange glow flickered from the fireplace, the remnants of the night's flames, and the faint crackle of the last ember sounded. Like the heartbeat of the room itself, the air smelled faintly of sea salt and damp wood. Every sound in the old keeper's house felt magnified by the morning quiet, the creak of a floorboard, the soft drip of rainwater sliding down the windowsill, the whisper of fabric as the traveler moved. They sat up slowly, rubbing sleep from their eyes, and found a small note folded neatly beside a cup of tea on the table. The handwriting was graceful, old-fashioned Aileras. "Follow the fog down to the docks," it said. "The morning is kind. The sea remembers your dreams." The traveler smiled faintly. Even Alara's notes seemed to hum with mystery. Steam curled from the cup, carrying the fragrance of lavender and honey. The tea was warm and silken, like liquid calm. It spread through the traveler's chest, steadying their breath, drawing them gently into the rhythm of the morning dot outside. Faint light seeped through the curtains, turning the fog into soft gold. The traveler rose, dressed, and stepped out into the world of mist. The fog path, the path down from the keeper's house, wound through fields of wild grass, heavy with dew. Each blade shimmered, each droplet reflecting tiny fragments of light that flickered like stars caught in daylight. The fog moved in slow curls, shifting and parting in waves that revealed glimpses of stone walls, old wooden fences, and the distant sound of the sea. Every so often, a gull called through the mist, not sharp, but low and lazy, as if even the birds were reluctant to break the morning peace. The traveler's boots made soft thuds on the cobblestone path. The air was cool, damp, and rich with the scent of salt and blooming thyme. Somewhere nearby, a chime sounded faint, hollow, and rhythmic, carried by the sea breeze. As they descended, the fog began to thin, unveiling a harbor nestled between cliffs and calm waters. Wooden piers stretched outward like open arms, boats rocking gently, ropes swaying and creaking against their masts. The sea shimmered faintly silver, its ripples smooth and glassy under the early light. The world here felt dreamlike, as though it existed between waking and sleep. Between land and tide, the sailors' rest at the far end of the dock stood a small cafe, its sign swaying gently in the breeze. The faded paint read, "The Sailor's Rest." From inside came the scent of baked bread, melted butter, and tea leaves steeping in warmth. A low hum of a kettle joined the rhythm of the waves. The traveler stepped in, brushing droplets of mist from their cloak. The cafe was simple, wooden tables polished smooth by years of use, a counter lined with jars of herbs and dried fruit, and a single large window facing the sea. Outside that window, the fog lingered, a veil between the world and the horizon. Behind the counter stood a man with salt and pepper hair tied loosely at the back. His hands were busy arranging a tray of freshly baked rolls dusted with sugar. He looked up with a smile that felt instantly familiar. "Good morning," he said warmly. "You must be the guest from the keeper's house. Ilara mentioned someone would be following the fog today." The traveler nodded, surprised by the easy recognition. "Yes, she left me a note. Said the sea remembers dreams." The man chuckled softly, pouring steaming tea into a ceramic cup. "That sounds like her. She believes the sea listens better than most people do. Here, try this. Lemon balm and sea thyme. It'll chase away the damp." The traveler accepted the cup and took a slow sip. The tea was fragrant and calming, with a hint of ocean air in its flavor. It seemed to untangle something inside them, a tension they hadn't even realized was there. The harbor bell through the mist. The sound of a bell drifted low, resonant and steady. It tolled only once every few minutes, its echo carrying across the calm water like a heartbeat. The traveler turned toward the window. "Is that the harbor bell?" The man nodded, wiping his hands on a towel. "Aye, it rings by itself most mornings. The sea's doing, some say by itself." The traveler asked, a gentle smile forming. He shrugged lightly. "No one's seen it move, not really. But on still days like this, it rings, soft and slow. My father said it's the tide speaking back. Others say it's the memory of old sailors keeping watch." The traveler listened. The sound of the bell seemed to linger even after it had stopped, its tone humming gently in the bones. "It feels alive," they whispered. The man smiled knowingly. "The whole bay is. You just have to be quiet long enough to hear it." The pair of lights after finishing their tea, the traveler stepped back outside. The fog was thinning now, drifting in ghost-like ribbons over the sea. Sunlight touched the edges of the waves, turning the mist into gold. The traveler walked to the farthest pier, an old wooden walkway slick with rain. The sea lapped softly against its beams, whispering in a rhythm that seemed to match the traveler's breath. They leaned over the railing and looked into the water. It was astonishingly clear. Beneath the surface, small lights flickered faint glimmers of blue and green, like tiny lanterns drifting in the depths. The traveler blinked, thinking it must be the reflection of the sky. But the colors pulsed, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat. And then they heard it, a low hum, deep and melodic. It rose from the water, surrounding them in a vibration that felt both ancient and kind. It wasn't a song with words, but something simpler, the kind of sound that spoke to the quiet parts of the soul. For a while, the traveler stood there, motionless, the sound flowing through them, filling every breath. The hum seemed to merge with the rhythm of the waves, the creak of the wood beneath their feet, the faint toll of the harbor bell in the distance. Then, as softly as it had begun, it faded. The lights beneath the water dimmed, sinking deeper until the sea was calm once more. The boatmaker at the edge of the dock. An older woman was sanding the hull of a small boat. Her hair was white, tied in a braid that rested against her shoulder. Her sleeves were rolled up, and her hands moved with the patience of someone who had worked with wood all her life. She glanced up and smiled when the traveler approached. "Morning. You've got Ilara's calm about you." "I can always tell," the traveler returned the smile. "You know her." The woman chuckled softly, smoothing a hand over the wood. "Known her for years. She keeps that lantern burning no matter what the weather brings. Says it keeps the sea from forgetting itself." The traveler tilted their head, curious. "Can the sea forget?" The woman's eyes sparkled. "Perhaps not the sea itself, but we do. We forget how to listen. The sea reminds us." She paused, studying the traveler for a moment. "You saw them, didn't you? The lights." She nodded slowly. "Aye, they appear when the sea dreams. That's what we call it, the sea's dreaming hour. When memories drift near the surface." "The lights were beautiful," the traveler murmured. "They are," she said softly. "Each one carries a memory of journeys, of voices long gone. The sea keeps them safe beneath the waves. That's why it hums sometimes. It's remembering." The gift of the Bather woman reached into a small wooden box beside her and took out a tiny vial. Inside, soft grains of sand shimmered faintly, mingled with flecks of blue-green glass. "Here," she said, handing it to the traveler. "A piece of the bay, so it'll always find you again." The traveler held it carefully. The vial was warm to the touch, like it had been sitting in sunlight. "Thank you," they whispered. The woman smiled. "When you can't sleep, hold it close. The sea hums through it. She'll sing you back to calm." The traveler slipped the vial into their pocket and nodded. "I will." "Good," she said simply, returning to her work. "The sea looks after those who listen." Returned to the keeper's house by late afternoon, the fog had lifted entirely. The sky was pale and clear, the water smooth as glass. The sound of children playing drifted from the beach laughter. Mingling with the rhythm of the tide, the traveler walked back along the path to the keeper's house, feeling lighter, as though the mist had carried away something heavy they hadn't noticed before. When they reached the cliffs, the lantern was already glowing in the window, soft gold against the gathering dusk. Ilara stood outside, her cloak fluttering faintly in the sea breeze. She smiled as the traveler approached. "The day has been kind to you," she said. "It has," the traveler replied. "I heard the sea's song." Ilara's eyes sparkled. "Then you heard what most never do. It only hums for those it trusts." They stood together in the quiet, watching as the first stars appeared above the horizon. The air was still, cool, and filled with that timeless scent of salt and evening light. Far below, the harbor bell rang once more, slow and distant, fading into the rhythm of the waves. The traveler turned toward the sea one last time before going inside. The water shimmered softly beneath the rising moon, and for just a moment, they thought they saw those same underwater lights again, faint, pulsing, alive. And as they lay in bed that night, the sound of the sea drifted through the open window, calm, rhythmic, eternal. The waves whispered against the rocks below, like a lullaby older than memory. Sleep came easily deep, gentle and endless. The night passed like a gentle sigh, slow, velvety, and filled with the sound of waves breathing against the cliffs. The lantern in the window glowed until dawn, casting soft, honey-colored light that flickered across the stone walls of the keeper's house. When morning came, it did not arrive with brilliance, but with grace. A thin light filtered through the mist, painting everything in shades of silver and pearl. The air felt cool against the skin, crisp but kind, the kind of morning that wrapped you in quiet rather than cold. The traveler awoke to the familiar hush of the sea. The room smelled faintly of salt and lavender, and the sound of gulls calling lazily over the water drifted through the open window. The bed was deep and warm, as though it remembered their shape from the night before. They took a deep, steadying breath in through the nose, slow and full, letting the lungs fill with calm, and then exhaled softly, letting go of the weight of thought outside. They could hear the distant rhythm of the tide, the faint toll of the harbor bell, and something else, something like a low hum, weaving gently through the morning air. Alara was waiting by the hearth when they emerged, her silver hair glinting faintly in the dim light. She was stirring a pot that smelled of oats, honey, and cinnamon. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice like the edge of a melody. "You slept well, I hope." The traveler smiled. "Very well. The sea sang me to sleep." Alara nodded knowingly. It tends to do that for those who listen. The waves have a language of their own. Most people only hear water, but the ones who are quiet enough hear memory. She ladled warm porridge into 2 bowls and motioned for the traveler to sit by the table. Steam curled gently upward, and the smell of cinnamon and milk filled the air. After a moment of quiet, Alara said, "Today, I think you are ready to see the lighthouse." The path of lanterns, the path to the lighthouse wound along the cliffs, narrow and smooth with years of use. It was lined with small glass lanterns, hundreds of them, each one shaped slightly differently. Some tall and slender, others round and small like marbles. Though the morning was brightening, the lanterns still glowed faintly, each holding a whisper of light. It wasn't fire, not quite. More like starlight captured and set gently inside glass. The traveler walked beside Alara, the sea stretching endlessly below, its waves rolling and folding like soft sheets of silk. Alara walked with ease, her steps measured and graceful. "The lanterns never go out," she said quietly. "They hold the dreams that drift from the sea, the ones that haven't yet found their dreamers again." The traveler glanced at her. "Dreams can get lost." "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes they wander too far. The lighthouse keeps them safe until they remember where to return." The wind was gentle, carrying with it the faint scent of wild rosemary growing along the cliffs. Every few steps, the traveler could hear the quiet chime of the glass lanterns swaying in the breeze. Not a sharp sound, but soft, like a whisper carried on silk. The further they walked, the thicker the mist became. It curled around their legs and brushed softly against their faces. The world shrank into stillness, just the path, the glow of the lanterns, and the rhythmic murmur of the sea below, the keeper's tower when they reached the top of the cliff. The lighthouse came into view, tall and pale, its surface weathered by time and salt. The door was made of driftwood, smoothed by waves and carved with symbols the traveler didn't recognize: spirals, stars, and the curling shape of waves. Alara pushed the door open. The hinges groaned softly, as if sighing awake after years of quiet. Inside, the air was cool and dry. The walls curved inward, their stone surface gleaming faintly in the lantern light. A spiral staircase wound upward around the center column, leading into the dim heights above. At the base of the tower, a round table stood near the window. On it sat a collection of glass jars, each filled with something different: glowing sand, feathers that shimmered faintly in the light, shells that seemed to hum when the breeze touched them. "The lighthouse," Alara said gently, "does not shine with fire. Its light is the glow of dreams. Every night, when the tide is high, the waves bring them here. The tower hums as it gathers their light, then releases it again into the sky." The traveler reached out, touching one of the jars. It was warm. Inside, tiny flecks of light floated lazily, drifting and swirling as if caught in a slow current. "They're beautiful," they whispered. Alara smiled. "They are the fragments of wishes, pieces of comfort that belong to someone, somewhere. The sea keeps them safe until they're needed again." The humming stairs, they began the climb up the spiral stairs. Each step echoed softly, but the sound did not disturb the peace. It became part of it, blending with the gentle hum that seemed to rise from the stones themselves. As they climbed, the light grew brighter, not harsh or sharp, but deep and soft, like sunlight seen through deep water. At each landing, there were windows, small and round, through which the sea was visible, stretching to the horizon. The water shimmered faintly with color, hints of gold, teal, and lilac blending beneath the surface. It felt as though the world was breathing slowly, in rhythm with their steps. Finally, they reached the top. The room was circular, open to the air, the sky above stretching vast and pale. The great light of the lighthouse stood in the center, not a flame, but a sphere of gentle glow, pulsing in slow rhythm. Around it floated hundreds of tiny motes of light, drifting like fireflies. The traveler stood still, feeling the warmth of the light brush against their skin. It was neither hot nor cold, simply comforting, like the warmth of a hand resting gently on the heart. Alara spoke softly. "Every dream that passes through the sea finds its way here. The ones that bring calm, the ones that whisper peace. They circle the light until the wind carries them out again to find their dreamers." The dreamlight the traveler stepped closer, their eyes wide. The sphere pulsed softly, its surface rippling like the tide. With each pulse came a faint melody, low, slow, and full of harmony, like a lullaby sung by the ocean itself. As they listened, their breathing slowed without effort. Their heartbeat matched the rhythm of the light, calm, steady, and peaceful. The air around them shimmered faintly. For a moment, it felt as if gravity had softened, as if they were floating, weightless in the calm. And in that stillness, they began to see something within the light. Not clear images, but impressions. A lantern flickering in the mist, the reflection of stars on water, the soft face of a child sleeping, the sound of rain on leaves, the laughter of someone far away, memories not their own, but belonging to the world. Ilara's voice came softly beside them. "This is what the sea dreams of. Not storms, not waves, but moments of stillness. Every calm tide, every night of gentle rain, every breath taken before sleep. The sea remembers peace and keeps it glowing here. The traveler closed their eyes and simply listened. The sound of the light filled the space around them, a tone so pure and smooth it melted thought. The hum seemed to sink into their chest, into their bones, into the soft rhythm of their breathing. Time drifted, unimportant. There was only the sound, the glow, and the feeling of peace expanding, filling every quiet corner of the soul. A whisper from the sea. After a while, Elara placed a hand on the traveler's shoulder. "Listen," she said softly. "Do you hear it?" At first, there was only silence. Then, beneath the steady hum, a voice began to emerge. Not sharp or human, but vast and soft, like the sound of waves folding onto sand. It spoke no words, and yet its meaning was clear. Rest. You are safe. The traveler felt tears prick at their eyes, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming calm. It was as though something deep within them had finally exhaled. The light pulsed once more, and in that pulse, they felt a warmth that reached beyond the body, a sense of being held by the whole world. Then, gently, the hum began to fade. The light dimmed to a soft golden glow, steady and still. Ilara's voice came again, barely above a whisper. "Now you understand why we keep the lantern burning in the keeper's house. The sea brings its dreams here, but the lantern reminds them where to return." The traveler nodded slowly. Their body felt loose, their mind quiet, as though all the edges of thought had softened and drifted apart. Descent into Duskers. They descended the spiral staircase. The sound of the sea grew louder, not in volume, but in closeness, as though the ocean itself was leaning in to listen. Outside, dusk had begun to gather. The sky was streaked with lavender and rose, the horizon shimmering with soft gold where the sun dipped low. The traveler paused by one of the lanterns lining the cliff path. Its glow had deepened, no longer faint, but warm and rich, like the color of melted honey. Inside the glass, they thought they saw movement, a shimmer, a faint pulse of light that seemed to breathe. They reached out and touched the glass gently. It was warm, alive. Elara smiled faintly. "That one has found its dreamer again," she said. "Soon it will drift back into the world." The traveler watched as the light flickered softly once, twice, and then, with a quiet sigh, faded from the lantern. A faint wisp of gold lifted into the evening air, drifting out toward the sea like a tiny star returning to the sky. The traveler whispered, "It's beautiful," Elara nodded. "Peace always is." They stood together in silence, the cool evening breeze brushing gently against their faces. Below, the sea shimmered with soft ripples of color, teal and silver, glowing faintly beneath the darkening sky. The world felt suspended, balanced between waking and dreaming. And in that stillness, as the last light of day melted into night, the traveler felt something deep within them settle, a quiet understanding that peace is not something found, but something remembered. The sky had begun to deepen into evening. Soft layers of lavender and rose slowly gave way to dusky blues, and the first stars began to flicker, quiet and patient, like candles being lit in some distant, endless hall. The traveler stood at the edge of the cliffs, looking down toward the harbor far below. The lanterns along the path glowed more brightly now, their light shimmering against the sea breeze. It was as though each flame had found its courage in the coming night. Elara stood beside them, her silver hair gleaming faintly in the dusk. In her hands, she held a small wooden box, the kind that might once have carried maps or letters. She opened it carefully. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, lay a piece of smooth, carved driftwood shaped like a boat. Its edges were polished and curved, its form simple but beautiful, as if it had been shaped not by hands, but by water and time. "This," she said softly, "is how the dreamers cross the sea." The traveler looked at her with quiet curiosity. "The dreamers?" Ilara smiled faintly. "Those who travel between waking and rest. Those who walk the line between worlds. Like you." She closed the box and handed it to the traveler. "Come, the tide is right." The descent to the shore, the path that led to the beach, curved gently downward, winding through tall grasses that swayed like sleepy waves. The air was cool and moist, filled with the scent of salt and distant rain. Fireflies hovered low, their glow mingling with the lanterns, forming a quiet constellation near the ground as they walked. The only sounds were the soft shuffle of their steps, the sigh of the breeze through the reeds, and the rhythmic hush of the waves below. When they reached the bottom of the cliff, the beach opened before them, a smooth expanse of dark sand scattered with small, polished stones that gleamed faintly in the moonlight. The sea itself was utterly calm. Its surface was so still that it reflected the stars perfectly, like a mirror laid across the world. Ilara stepped forward, her cloak brushing lightly against the sand. She knelt near the water's edge and whispered something, a word too soft for the traveler to hear. The sea responded with a faint shimmer. Then, before their eyes, the small carved boat began to grow. The wood stretched, reshaped, and settled gently onto the waves until it was large enough to hold them both. Yet it made no sound as it touched the water. Not a splash, not even a ripple. The traveler watched in awe. "How does it do that?" "The sea knows," Ilara said simply. "It remembers the shape of every voyage." The first drift, they stepped into the boat. The wood was warm underfoot, smooth and welcoming. There were no oars, no sail, only the faint hum of the tide beneath them, and the distant whisper of stars overhead. As soon as they settled, the boat began to move, slowly at first, gliding forward with the softest motion. Guided by the rhythm of the water, the shore began to fade behind them, the cliffs becoming hazy outlines, the lanterns shrinking into a string of golden pearls. Ahead, the horizon stretched endlessly, dark water merging into soft silver mist. The traveler leaned back, feeling the quiet cradle of the boat. Every small wave that lifted them felt like a breath, the sea inhaling and exhaling beneath their weight. Ilara sat opposite, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "Do you hear it?" she asked quietly. The traveler listened. At first, there was only silence. Then, faintly, a melody began to rise. A sound not quite from the air, not quite from the water. It was low, gentle, and shimmering, like a song made from the turning of the tide itself. The traveler felt the sound move through them, not just heard, but felt in their chest, in their heartbeat, in the spaces between thoughts. "That's the sea's lullaby," Ilara said softly. "It carries dreams from shore to shore." The sound grew clearer, weaving in harmony with the soft rocking of the boat. Every note seemed to loosen something inside, the last remains of tension. The final grip of WAKEFULNESS. The traveler let their eyes close for a moment. The melody swayed through them like water. Their breath began to match the rhythm of the waves, slow, deep, unhurried, in that stillness. They realized that the boat wasn't being guided by wind or tide, but by something gentler, perhaps the pulse of the dream itself. The lantern isle's time drifted, becoming soft and round, as though the hours themselves were asleep. When the traveler opened their eyes again, they saw islands ahead, small and scattered, floating like clusters of glowing stones. Each island was wrapped in mist, but faint lights flickered among them, lanterns suspended from branches, orbs floating above the surface of the water, soft reflections dancing in every direction. The boat slowed naturally, coasting toward one of the islands. The air here smelled faintly sweet, like honey and rain. The waves made soft tapping sounds against the shore, and the trees, tall, slender, and silver-leaved, shimmered faintly as if dusted with starlight. Alara stepped out of the boat first, her feet making no imprint on the sand. "This is the first of the Lantern Isles," she said. "Here the dreams of others rest for a while before returning home." The traveler followed, feeling the sand cool and smooth beneath their feet. The ground itself seemed to hum softly, a vibration that wasn't sound but sensation, like the sea's breath still echoing through the island. Between the trees, small lights drifted, orbs of many colors, glowing softly, never still. Some were pale blue, others soft gold or faint rose. They moved like lazy fireflies, circling gently, their light reflecting off leaves and branches in waves of color. "What are they?" the traveler whispered. Elara smiled faintly. "Dreams in waiting, those who have not yet found their way back." The traveler reached out a hand, and one of the lights drifted closer. It hovered just above their palm, warm and light, pulsing softly in rhythm with their breath. Inside it, they saw faint images, not sharp, but impressions. A hand tracing letters on parchment, a candle burning beside a window, the shadow of rain falling on a glass pane. Then, as though recognizing them, the light pulsed once, warmly, and drifted upward, higher and higher, until it joined the stars above. The traveler watched it go. "It found its way," they whispered. "Yes," said Alara. "Sometimes a dream just needs to be remembered." The bridge of water beyond the first island. The sea began to glow again, faint lines of blue weaving across the surface like silk threads. The boat, sensing their return, drifted closer as if summoned. When they stepped aboard once more, the water beneath them began to shimmer. A faint path of light appeared, a glowing current stretching from one island to the next, leading deeper into the sea that the boat followed, silent and sure. Around them, the sky seemed to pulse with light, the stars shimmering in harmony with the glowing tide. The air had grown even quieter now. Even the waves seemed to hold their breath. The traveler rested their head against the side of the boat and let their eyes drift shut again. They imagined that they were floating, not just across water, but through memory itself, drifting across everything the world had ever whispered, every calm that had ever existed. Their body grew heavier, looser. Their thoughts slowed. The sound of Alara's voice reached them faintly, almost like a lullaby. "Let the sea carry what you no longer need. Let it wash the edges of thought, leaving only the softest shapes. You are safe here. You are held." The traveler smiled faintly in their half-sleep. The words wrapped around them like a warm blanket. The midnight horizon at last, they reached the farthest part of the sea. The water was darker here, but not frightening, deep and endless, like velvet. The stars reflected perfectly on its surface, creating the illusion of two skies, one above, one below. The boat came to a gentle stop. Elara turned toward the traveler, her expression peaceful. This is where the sea meets its own reflection, where dreams fall asleep. The traveler looked round. The silence was absolute now. No wind, no waves, only the quiet hum of the world resting. They took a slow, deep breath. The air here felt lighter, easier to hold. Elara closed her eyes, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, very softly, she whispered, "This is where you let go." The traveler nodded. They leaned back in the boat, letting their head rest, their body heavy and relaxed. Their arms sank beside them, their fingers brushing against the smooth wood. The sea cradled them. The stars shimmered faintly overhead, and slowly, with each breath, the traveler began to drift, not away from the world, but deeper into it, into the spaces between sound and silence, between wakefulness and dreams. The last thing they remembered before sleep took them was the voice of the sea itself, low, infinite, whispering like a mother soothing her child. "Rest, you are safe. You are home." The boat glided silently across the final stretch of the dreaming sea. The stars above shimmered like silver seeds scattered across a deep, velvet sky, and their reflections danced upon the calm waters below, so that the whole world seemed to glow softly, as though lit from within. The air was utterly still now. No wind stirred, no wave rose, only the faint rhythmic sound of breathing, the sea inhaling, exhaling, in time with the traveler's heart. It was impossible to tell how long they had been drifting. Time no longer felt linear, but wide and open, stretching like a calm tide that could carry a soul forever. Elara sat quietly, her eyes half closed, her silver hair moving just slightly with the rhythm of the world. "You are close now," she whispered, her voice calm and steady, like the hush that comes before dawn. "The Isle of Eternal Rest waits for those who have traveled far enough to find peace." The traveler looked up, and in the distance, they saw it a faint glow on the horizon, like the breath of a candle behind a curtain. With every slow glide of the boat, that glow grew stronger, until it revealed itself as a small island, surrounded by a ring of mist that shimmered with pale blue light. It was neither bright nor dark, just balanced, timeless, like a thought that never ends. The island appears the closer they came. The more details emerged. The island was covered in soft grasses that rippled gently though no breeze touched them. Tall trees arched overhead like guardians of silence, their leaves glowing faintly, silver green against the indigo sky. At the center of the island stood a small stone structure, part temple, part cottage, with ivy trailing down its sides. The boat slowed as it neared the shore, then came to a complete stop. The water here was shallow, glowing faintly from beneath as though lit by the dreams of all who had drifted here before. Elara stood, stepping gracefully onto the soft sand. "This is where the journey ends," she said, "and where another begins." The traveler followed, feeling the fine grains of sand beneath their feet, cool, smooth, comforting. Each step felt slower, heavier, but not tiring, more like the body had finally remembered how to rest. The air around them was filled with a sound, almost too soft to hear, like a lullaby made of distance and memory. Somewhere, faintly, the waves lapped at the edge of the island, marking the rhythm of stillness. The garden of Lantern Solara guided the traveler up a narrow path leading toward the center of the island. The grass glowed faintly beneath their steps, each footprint leaving a trace of silver light that faded slowly behind them. The path opened into a small garden, filled with floating lanterns. They were suspended in the air, gently swaying as though moved by invisible hands. Some were pale gold, others soft violet or blue, and each emitted a low hum as if breathing. "This garden," Alara said softly, "holds the lanterns of all who have found their way to rest. Every light here once belonged to a wanderer, a soul searching for calm." The traveler watched the lanterns drift in slow, lazy arcs, their glow spilling across the grass like scattered moonlight. Each one pulsed in time with something ancient, perhaps the rhythm of the sea, or perhaps the quiet heartbeat of peace itself. Alara placed a hand on one of the lanterns, and it drifted gently toward her. "When you are ready," she said, "you will light yours." The traveler didn't ask how. Somehow, they already knew. They closed their eyes, and for a long, silent moment, they simply breathed, in and out, in and out. With each breath, the weight of every thought began to fade. The small worries, the forgotten plans, the gentle ache of time. In their place came stillness, warmth, safety when they opened their eyes. One of the lanterns, a soft blue one, began to glow more brightly. It drifted downward, hovering just above their palms. Inside it shimmered faint images, starlight on water, footprints on a quiet path, the curve of waves against a distant shore. It pulsed once, then twice, then began to rise slowly, carrying the traveler's calm into the soft air. Alara smiled. "Now your dream will light the way for others." The traveler watched as the lantern floated upward until it joined the others, its light blending gently into the slow dance above the garden, the chamber of sleep at. The far end of the garden stood the small stone cottage. Its door was carved with spirals and waves, the same pattern that marked the sea's gentle surface. Alara pushed the door open, revealing a single room inside. The air was warm and scented faintly with lavender and rain. A small fire burned in the hearth, not bright, but calm, steady. Its flames low and golden dot. In the center of the room stood a bed draped with soft, pale fabric. The sheets were smooth and cool to the touch, and the pillows looked as though they were made from clouds. "This," Alara said, "is the chamber of sleep. It welcomes all travelers who have carried their hearts far enough to rest." The traveler stepped closer, feeling the warmth of the fire brush gently against their face. Their eyelids grew heavier, not from exhaustion, but from contentment. The simple knowing that there was nothing left to do. Elara moved to the window, where the view opened to the sea below. The horizon was silver now, the stars reflected endlessly, merging sky and water into one eternal quiet. "Every dream," she said softly, "finds its way here, sooner or later. The sea gathers them, the stars guide them, and here they rest until the dreamer awakens again, lighter than before." She turned back to the traveler. "You may lie down now." The traveler nodded, and slowly they lowered themselves onto the bed. The sheets embraced them, cool and soft. The pillow seemed to shape itself to their breathing. The descent into Driamelara sat beside the bed. Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet it filled the room like music that could only be heard through the heart. "Let your body grow heavy," she murmured. "Feel the weight of it sink into the bed, safe and warm. Let the muscles behind your eyes soften. Let your breath slow. The world will hold itself for a while. There is nothing you must do, nothing you must fix. Only rest." The traveler's chest rose and fell in perfect rhythm with her words. The air around them seemed to thicken, not with weight, but with softness, a cocoon of quiet. "Let go," she continued, her tone even softer now. "You are no longer the traveler. You are the sea. You are the calm between tides." The sound of the fire faded into the background. The heartbeat of the sea outside pulsed gently, steady and infinite. Each breath became slower, deeper, until the line between waking and dream began to blur. The vision of light somewhere in that twilight state. The traveler felt themselves floating again, not in the boat, but within light itself. They drifted through soft colors that shimmered like silk underwater. Silver, pale violet, soft blue. Each color carried a sensation. The feeling of cool rain on skin. The warmth of sunlight through closed eyes. The quiet weightlessness of surrender in the distance. A voice whispered, not Elaros now, but something larger, deeper. It was the sea itself, or perhaps the voice of sleep. "You have wandered far. You have seen the lanterns and the waves. Now rest, child of calm. The dream is yours to keep." The traveler smiled faintly, the expression barely there, the final trace of waking thought. And then they exhaled fully, completely, and drifted into true sleep. The morning beyond outside. Dawn touched the horizon, soft gold spreading across the water, lighting the garden of lanterns in gentle hues. Each light shimmered once more, brighter than before. As if greeting the sun after a long night's vigil, Alara stood at the edge of the island, looking out at the calm expanse of sea. The boat still floated nearby, waiting silently, though it would not be needed for some time. She closed her eyes and smiled, whispering to the wind, "Another dreamer has found their way home." And somewhere, deep within the chamber of sleep, the traveler breathed in peace. The world, vast and quiet, held them in perfect stillness, safe, warm, infinite. The sea sighed softly, the lanterns flickered, and sleep, deep and kind, wrapped the island in silver calm, closing Whisperand now. As you listen to the final moments of this story, let your own breath fall into rhythm with the waves. Feel the bed beneath you holding you with quiet strength. Every muscle softens, every thought drifts like a feather upon the tide. You are safe. You are calm. You are home. Drift now into your own isle of eternal rest, where dreams shimmer like lanterns across an endless, peaceful sea. Sleep well, dear traveler. Sleep deeply. Good night.